Alexandra Kincaid clutched her coffee cup a little too tightly as yet another date crashed and burned before her eyes. Across the table, the handsome investment banker was outlining in excruciating detail the vacation properties they could purchase together, once things got serious. They'd known each other for exactly 47 minutes. "So what do you think about the Hamptons for summer and maybe Aspen for winter?" he asked, his perfect white teeth gleaming under the restaurant's ambient lighting. "Your family's shipping empire must give you access to some incredible places." Sophie Kingston, who had introduced herself simply as Sophie, forced a polite smile. "I think you've mistaken me for someone who's impressed by people who research my net worth before a first date." The man's expression shifted, his smile faltering just enough to confirm her suspicions. "I just did my homework. Isn't that what any smart person would do?" "Homework," she repeated, placing her napkin on the table and reaching for her purse. "That's what you call stalking my family's financial records. I appreciate your honesty, at least. Come on, don't be like that." "You can't blame a guy for being thorough." Sophie stood, suddenly tired in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour. "Actually, I can. Goodbye, Derek." As she stepped out into the crisp October evening, Sophie drew her coat tighter around her shoulders. 6 dates in 3 weeks, and every single one had followed the same pattern. Initial charm followed by thinly veiled questions about her family's shipping corporation, her investment portfolio, or her penthouse overlooking Central Park. She pulled out her phone, tempted to call her sister Sarah, but stopped herself. Sarah would only say, "I told you so," and suggest once again that Sophie try dating outside the upper echelons of Manhattan society. But how? Her entire world was curated and controlled, each social interaction carefully orchestrated around her status as the youngest Kincaid heiress. The next morning, Sophie sat in her corner office on the 52nd floor of the Kincaid Tower, absently scrolling through emails while her assistant hovered in the doorway. "Miss Kincaid, the board meeting starts in 15 minutes, and your mother called again about the charity gala." "Thanks, Emily." Sophie sighed, gathering her tablet and presentation materials. "Did she mention which eligible bachelor she's planning to seat me next to this time?" Emily's sympathetic smile said everything. "The son of the CEO of Westmore Industries. Wonderful. Another man who'll recite my family's net worth to the penny before dessert." Sophie stood, smoothing her tailored skirt. "Tell Jenkins to bring the car around at 4. I need to escape this tower for a while this afternoon." The board meeting dragged on for nearly 2 hours. Sophie delivering her quarterly analysis of international market expansion with practiced precision. Though only 28, she had proven herself as the company's most forward-thinking strategist, even if some of the older board members still saw her as Edmund Kincaid's little girl. By 4:30, Sophie was sitting in a small cafe 10 blocks from her office building, her driver waiting discreetly outside. She'd shed her designer blazer, let her dark hair down from its tight bun, and swapped her heels for the ballet flats she kept in her bag. It was the closest she could come to anonymity without actual disguise. She was halfway through her Earl Grey when the commotion started. A little girl, no more than 5 years old with unruly curls, ran through the cafe, giggling as she dodged between tables. "Emma, slow down." A deep voice called out, followed by a harried-looking man rushing in after the child. He caught up to the little girl just as she bumped into Sophie's table, sending the tea sloshing over the rim of the cup. "Oh, no, I'm so sorry," the man said, grabbing napkins from a nearby dispenser. He was tall, with dark hair slightly too long, wearing a worn flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms. His eyes were a startling blue, bright with genuine concern. "Emma, what did we say about running indoors?" The little girl looked down. "Not to. And I'm sorry I spilled the ladies' tea," she said, looking up at Sophie with enormous brown eyes. Despite the tea now staining her silk blouse, Sophie found herself smiling. "It's quite all right, no harm done." "I'll pay for another cup," the man insisted, reaching for his wallet. "Really, it's fine, it wasn't even that hot anymore." Sophie extended her hand. "I'm Sophie, Mason Wright." His handshake was firm but gentle. "And this hurricane is my daughter, Emma." I'm 5 3/4, Emma announced proudly. Sophie laughed. That's very impressive. We don't usually cause tea-related disasters, Mason said with a self-deprecating smile. But someone's a little excited because we just found out her kindergarten class is taking a field trip to the aquarium next month. The sharks have really big teeth. Emma demonstrated with her fingers against her mouth, making a chomping motion. Would you like to join me? Sophie heard herself asking, surprised by her own invitation. I mean, if you're not in a rush. Mason hesitated, glancing at his watch. We were just grabbing a quick snack before heading home. Please, Daddy, Emma tugged at his sleeve. The lady is nice. Something about Mason's unguarded expression and the genuine warmth in his eyes made Sophie add, I promise I don't bite, unlike those sharks. Mason's smile reached his eyes this time. Well, when you put it that way. He pulled out a chair for Emma before sitting down himself, but I'm still buying you a fresh tea. For the next 30 minutes, Sophie found herself completely charmed by Emma's enthusiastic descriptions of kindergarten politics and Mason's wry commentary. He mentioned he was a carpenter, currently working on a restoration project in Brooklyn, but didn't press Sophie for details about her own work beyond her vague mention of corporate finance. When Emma started getting restless, Mason checked his watch again. We should get going. Emma has a playdate with our neighbor's kid, and I've got some design plans to finish tonight. Of course, Sophie said, surprised by her own disappointment. As they stood to leave, Emma tugged on Sophie's hand. Do you like sharks too? Sophie knelt down to the girl's level. I do. They're fascinating creatures. You should come see them with us at the aquarium, Emma declared. Emma, Mason gently admonished, Sophie probably has more important things to do. Actually, Sophie said, straightening up and meeting Mason's gaze, I love aquariums. Mason looked momentarily flustered. That's Emma's class trip, so. Oh, right. Sophie felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. Mason rubbed the back of his neck. But maybe we could meet here again sometime, for a non-spilled cup of tea. The hopeful look in his eyes made Sophie's heart beat a little faster. I'd like that. They exchanged phone numbers, and Sophie watched them leave, Emma skipping ahead while Mason kept a watchful eye on her. When she finally gathered her things and stepped outside, Jenkins raised an eyebrow at her tea-stained blouse but wisely said nothing. 3 days later, Sophie found herself back at the same cafe, nervously checking her watch. She'd changed outfits 3 times that morning, finally settling on jeans and a simple cashmere sweater, the most casual items in her expansive closet, yet still probably worth more than Mason earned in a week. The thought made her uneasy. Mason arrived 5 minutes late, slightly out of breath. Sorry, the subway was delayed and then I realized I forgot my phone, so I had to run back. He stopped, taking in her appearance. You look nice. Thanks, Sophie smiled, noting his freshly trimmed hair and clean button-down shirt. So do you. For a moment, they just looked at each other until Mason cleared his throat. So no corporate finance today, day off, Sophie said, which wasn't entirely a lie. She'd moved 3 meetings and temporarily surrendered her phone to Emily. How's Emma? Currently plotting world domination via shark knowledge with her best friend Zoe. Mason's face softened when he spoke about his daughter. She made me promise to get all the details about whether you'd seen a real shark. Only through glass at various aquariums, I'm afraid. Sophie stirred her tea. She's adorable. Has she always been interested in marine life? It's a recent obsession. Last month it was dinosaurs, and before that it was space. Mason shrugged. I try to keep up, but sometimes I find myself Googling, do hammerhead sharks actually have hammer-shaped heads, at midnight? Sophie laughed. And do they? Turns out, yes, who knew? His smile was warm, genuine in a way Sophie had almost forgotten existed. What about you? Any midnight Google searches I should know about, lately. How to escape charity galas without offending your mother. Mason raised an eyebrow. Sounds intense. You have no idea, Sophie said, relieved when he didn't push for details. Their conversation flowed easily, covering everything from favorite books to worst cooking disasters. Mason told her about growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, about discovering his passion for woodworking in high school, and about his struggles and joys as a single father. Emma's mom left when she was 2, he explained, a shadow crossing his face. Decided parenthood wasn't for her after all. I'm sorry, Sophie said softly. Mason shrugged. It was rough at first, but we've got a good rhythm now. My mom helps out when I have late jobs and Emma's in a great school. She seems like a wonderful kid. You've done an amazing job with her. His expression softened. Thanks, that means a lot. What about your family? Sophie hesitated. Complicated. My father built a business empire from nothing, and my mother's never forgotten it. My sister is married to a congressman, and my brother runs the Asian division of the fam of a major corporation. And where do you fit in? The question, asked with genuine curiosity rather than calculation, caught Sophie off guard. I'm still figuring that out, she admitted. Everyone has expectations, and sometimes I wonder if I'm living my life or the one they've designed for me. Mason nodded slowly. I get that. Different scale, maybe, but after Emma's mom left, everyone had opinions on what I should do. Move back home, change careers, date specific people. He grimaced. The last woman my mother tried to set me up with spent the entire date explaining why Emma needed a real mother and how she'd be perfect for the role. Ouch. Yeah, checked my escape routes within the first 10 minutes. His blue eyes crinkled at the corners. But sometimes you meet someone and time just disappears. Sophie felt warmth spread through her chest. Yes, sometimes you do. They ended up walking through a nearby park, talking until the afternoon light began to fade. When Mason mentioned needing to pick up Emma, Sophie was shocked to see 3 hours had passed. Can I see you again? Mason asked as they reached the park entrance. I'd like that, Sophie replied. Very much. Over the next few weeks, Sophie found herself creating more and more gaps in her schedule. She met Mason for lunch on her way to meetings, joined him and Emma for ice cream on a Saturday afternoon, and even spent an evening helping Emma with a shark diorama for school, while Mason prepared dinner in his modest Brooklyn apartment. The apartment had surprised her not because it was small or in an unfashionable neighborhood, but because it felt more like a home than any place she'd ever lived. Mason's handcrafted furniture filled the space, each piece telling a story. Emma's artwork decorated the refrigerator, and family photos lined the hallway. The kitchen was tiny but warm, with mason jars full of pasta and flour lining open shelves. You made all of this? Sophie asked, running her hand along the dining table's smooth surface. Most of it, Mason nodded. The couch was a lucky find, but I refinished it. The bookshelves, coffee table, Emma's bed, those are all mine. They're beautiful, Sophie said sincerely. You have an incredible talent. Something in Mason's expression shifted. Thanks. It doesn't exactly compare to corporate finance, but it pays the bills. Most months anyway. That's not what I meant, Sophie said quickly. I think what you do is amazing, creating something tangible, something that lasts, that's special. Mason's eyes softened. Sorry, sometimes I get defensive. My ex used to say carpentry was a hobby, not a career. She was wrong, Sophie said firmly. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, they sat on Mason's worn but comfortable couch, wine glasses in hand. You're good with her, Mason said. Most people I date either ignore her or try too hard. Sophie's heart fluttered at the casual acknowledgement that this was, in fact, dating. She makes it easy. She's smart and funny just like her dad. Mason smiled, then hesitated. Listen, Sophie, I've been meaning to ask. We've been seeing each other for almost a month now, and I still don't know your last name. Sophie froze. Does it matter? I guess not, but it's a little weird, right? I mean, you've met my daughter, been to my home, but there's still this distance. Sometimes I feel like you're keeping parts of yourself hidden. Sophie set down her wine glass, her stomach nodding. She deliberately avoided mentioning her surname, had given vague answers about her work, had always met him on her terms. It's complicated. Life usually is, Mason said gently. But I'm starting to care about you a lot, and I need to know if this is going somewhere or if I'm just a distraction from your real life. The hurt in his voice made Sophie's chest ache. You're not a distraction, Mason. Being with you and Emma is the most real thing in my life right now. Then why the secrets? Are you married? In witness protection? His attempt at humor fell flat. Sophie took a deep breath. My last name is Kincaid, Mason blinked. Okay, and Kincaid. As in Kincaid International Shipping and Trade, Mason's brow furrowed. That sounds vaguely familiar, but it's a Fortune 500 company. My family owns it. I'm wealthy, very wealthy. Understanding dawned slowly on Mason's face. Oh, that's it, just oh. What do you want me to say? Congratulations. Sophie twisted her hands in her lap. Most men have a stronger reaction when they find out. Is that why you didn't tell me? You thought I would ask for money, try to take advantage somehow. It's happened before, Sophie admitted. Many times. Mason was quiet for a long moment. That explains a lot. The vague answers about work, the driver I've seen waiting for you, the way you never let me pay for anything. He ran a hand through his hair. But Sophie, did you really think I was like that? No, she said softly. That's why I kept seeing you. You were different. You saw me, not my bank account. Because I didn't know about your bank account, Mason pointed out. How is that fair? You got to decide what parts of me were acceptable while hiding major parts of yourself. I wasn't hiding who I am, Sophie protested. Just what I have. But that's part of who you are, whether you like it or not. Mason stood, pacing the small living room. I've been totally open with you. About Emma, about my ex, about my financial struggles. Do you know how humiliating it was to tell you I couldn't afford to take Emma on a real vacation last summer? And all that time, you were slumming it with the poor carpenter. That's not fair, Sophie's voice cracked. It was never like that. Then what was it like? Because from where I'm standing, you weren't honest with me from day one. Sophie stood, tears threatening. I was protecting myself. Every man I've ever dated has been more interested in my family's money than in me. You were the first person in years who seemed to like me for who I am, not what I'm worth. Mason's expression softened slightly. I understand being cautious, Sophie, but relationships need trust, and trust needs honesty. I know, she whispered. I'm sorry, he sighed heavily. It's late. Maybe we both need some time to think. Sophie nodded, gathering her coat. At the door, she turned back. For what it's worth, the last few weeks have been the happiest I've had in a very long time. Mason's smile was tinged with sadness. Yeah, for me too. The following week was one of the longest of Sophie's life. She threw herself into work, staying late at the office and attending the business functions she'd been avoiding. Her mother commented approvingly on her renewed focus, while Emily shot her concerned glances when she thought Sophie wasn't looking. On Thursday afternoon, Sophie sat through a tedious budget meeting, her mind wandering repeatedly to Mason and Emma. She wondered if they'd visited the aquarium yet, if Emma had impressed her classmates with her shark knowledge, if Mason had finished the custom bookshelf he'd been designing for a client in Manhattan. Sophie, your thoughts on the Singapore expansion? Her father's voice cut through her reverie. I think we need to reconsider the timeline, she said, gathering her thoughts. The regulatory environment is shifting, and rushing in could cost us more in the long run. Edmund Kincaid studied his daughter with shrewd eyes. That contradicts the position you took last quarter. New information requires new strategies, Sophie replied, pulling up data on her tablet. If you look at the projections. The meeting continued, but afterward her father asked her to stay behind. At 62, Edmund was still an imposing figure, his silver hair and tailored suits projecting the authority that had built Kincaid International into a global powerhouse. You seem distracted lately, he said without preamble. Is everything all right? Sophie considered a polite deflection, then decided on honesty. I met someone. Edmund's eyebrows rose. Not one of your mother's selections, I take it. No, Sophie smiled faintly. Definitely not. And this someone is causing you to rethink the Singapore strategy. No, that's based on the data, but he is making me rethink other things. Her father leaned back in his chair. Such as, what I want, who I want to be. Sophie met her father's gaze. Did you ever wonder if there was more to life than this company? Edmund was quiet for a moment. Every day for the first 15 years of building it, he finally said. I missed your first steps, your first words. I missed school plays and soccer games. I told myself it was worth it, that I was creating a legacy for my children. He sighed. By the time I realized the legacy meant nothing without the relationships. Your mother had filled your schedules with activities and expectations I couldn't compete with. Sophie stared at her father, seeing a vulnerability she'd never witnessed before. I didn't know you felt that way. I don't discuss feelings much, Edmund acknowledged wryly. Another regret. But Sophie, if this someone makes you happy, truly happy, don't let our expectations stand in your way. Even if he's a carpenter with a 5-year-old daughter and an apartment in Brooklyn, Edmund's lips twitched. Even then, especially then, he stood, straightening his suit jacket. Money can buy many things, but not the kind of happiness that matters. That took me decades to learn. Sophie impulsively hugged her father, something she hadn't done since childhood. Thank you. Just don't tell your mother I said any of this, Edmund warned as he returned the embrace. She still thinks I care about those charity galas she drags me to. Later that evening, Sophie sat in her penthouse, staring at her phone. After 3 false starts, she finally typed, "I miss you." "Both of you, can we talk?" Mason's reply came within minutes. "Emma's been asking about you. The shark diorama got an A+." Sophie smiled through the tears that suddenly blurred her vision. "I bet it was the best in the class. Objectively speaking, of course." There was a pause then. "I miss you too. Can I come over tomorrow? I'd like to explain better, about everything. Emma has a playdate until 6. Come at 7. I'll make dinner." The next evening, Sophie arrived at Mason's apartment with a small gift bag for Emma and a nervous flutter in her stomach. Mason opened the door, his expression cautious but warm. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi yourself." He stepped back to let her in. "Emma's finishing her homework, but she's been counting down the minutes." As if on cue, Emma came barreling down the hallway. "Sophie, you came back." "Did you see any sharks while you were gone?" Sophie laughed, kneeling to hug the little girl. "No sharks, but I brought you something." She handed over the gift bag. Emma tore into it, gasping when she pulled out a plush hammerhead shark. "It's perfect." "Look, Daddy, it really does have a hammerhead." "So it does," Mason smiled. "What do you say to Sophie?" "Thank you." Emma hugged the shark, then Sophie again. "I named my diorama shark Sophie because you helped me make it. Now I can name this one Sophie Jr." "I'm honored," Sophie said, swallowing the lump in her throat. After dinner and Emma's bedtime, Mason and Sophie sat at the kitchen table, coffee mugs between them. "I owe you a better explanation," Sophie began. "You don't owe me anything," Mason interrupted. "I've had time to think, and I understand why you were cautious. It was the how, not the why, that bothered me. Still, I want you to understand." Sophie took a deep breath. "All my life, I've been the Kincaid heiress first and Sophie second. In college, my roommate sold stories about me to gossip blogs. My first serious boyfriend proposed with my family's company's stock projections worked into his speech." She grimaced at the memory. "After a while, I stopped believing anyone could see past the money." Mason reached across the table to take her hand. "That sounds incredibly lonely." "It was, until I met you." Sophie looked up, meeting his gaze. "You saw me, just me, spilled tea and all, and with Emma. For the first time, I felt like I was valued for who I am, not what I could provide." "You are," Mason said firmly. "Money or no money, you're smart and kind and amazing with my daughter. That's what matters to me." "I know that now," Sophie squeezed his hand. "But I need to be completely honest with you. My life is complicated. There are board meetings and charity galas and family obligations I can't always avoid. My mother will probably hate that you make furniture instead of mergers and acquisitions." Mason smiled. "And my daughter thinks sharks are the pinnacle of evolution. We all have our crosses to bear." Sophie laughed, feeling the tension ease from her shoulders. "So where does that leave us?" "Well," Mason said thoughtfully, "I believe it leaves us as 2 adults who care about each other, trying to figure out how to make room in their lives for something real." "I'd like that," Sophie whispered. "Me too." He stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "But fair warning, Emma's field trip to the aquarium is next Tuesday and they need parent chaperones. Think you can handle 20 kindergarteners hyped up on shark facts?" Sophie wrapped her arms around his neck. "For you and Emma. I'd brave a tank full of actual sharks." "Careful what you promise," Mason murmured, leaning down to kiss her softly. "Emma's already planning our summer vacation to see real sharks. Apparently, the Georgia Aquarium has whale sharks you can swim with." "Georgia, huh?" "I might know a few people there." Sophie smiled against his lips. "But first, maybe we could start with dinner at my place. And by my place, I mean the penthouse I've been avoiding telling you about." Mason's eyes widened slightly. Is it going to make me feel inadequate about my coffee table design skills? Your coffee table is perfect, Sophie assured him. But my kitchen hasn't been used for anything more complicated than coffee in about 3 years, so you might have to help me figure out the oven. Deal. Mason kissed her again, more deeply this time. Though I should warn you, Emma's going to want a tour of every room and will almost certainly jump on any bed she finds. I'm counting on it, Sophie said, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. 6 months later, Sophie stood in the crowded auditorium of Emma's elementary school, recording on her phone as the kindergarten class performed their end-of-year play about ocean conservation. Emma, dressed as a hammerhead shark, delivered her lines with dramatic flair, stealing glances at Sophie and Mason between each sentence. She's going to be an actress, Mason whispered, his arm around Sophie's waist. Or a marine biologist, Sophie suggested. Or both. As long as she's happy, Mason agreed. After the performance, they took Emma for ice cream to celebrate, the little girl chattering excitedly about summer vacation and the trip they had planned to visit the aquarium in Georgia. And after that, can we go see where Sophie works? Emma asked, ice cream smeared around her mouth. I told Zoe that Sophie works in a building that touches the clouds, but she said I was making it up. Mason looked at Sophie with an amused expression. What do you think? Ready to introduce Emma to the corporate world? Absolutely, Sophie nodded. Though I should warn you, my assistant has already bought her a custom desk nameplate that says Future CEO. Bold of Emily to assume I'm not grooming her to take over Wright custom furniture, Mason teased. I want to do both, Emma declared. I can build shark-shaped tables for Sophie's company. Sounds like a solid business plan, Sophie laughed, her heart full as she watched Mason wipe ice cream from his daughter's face. Later that night, after Emma was asleep in the guest room of Sophie's penthouse, which now featured child-friendly furniture handcrafted by Mason, they stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights. I have something for you, Mason said, pulling a small wooden box from his pocket. Sophie's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a delicate wooden ring with a small diamond set into the band. I made it from the same wood as that cafe table where we first met, Mason explained. The diamond is small, but it's perfect, Sophie interrupted, tears filling her eyes. Absolutely perfect. I can't offer you wealth or status, Mason said softly, but I can promise to see you the real you every single day for the rest of our lives, if you'll have me. There's nothing in the world I want more, Sophie whispered as he slipped the ring onto her finger. As they kissed under the night sky, Sophie thought about the spilled tea that had changed everything, about Emma's shark obsession, about her father's unexpected wisdom. She thought about the journey from loneliness to belonging, from caution to trust, from hiding to being fully seen. And she knew with absolute certainty that she had found what all her family's wealth could never buy. A love based not on what she had, but on who she was. 1 year later, in a small ceremony in Central Park, Sophie Kingston became Sophie Wright. Emma served as flower girl, scattering rose petals with the same enthusiasm she brought to shark facts. Edmund Kincaid walked his daughter down the aisle with tears in his eyes, while Mason waited with a smile that outshone the spring sunshine. Their vows, written by hand on paper that matched the invitations Mason had crafted in his workshop, spoke of seeing each other clearly, of building a life from honesty and trust, of embracing both worlds, his modest carpentry shop and her corporate boardroom, with equal reverence. And when they moved into their new brownstone, purchased with Sophie's money but filled with Mason's furniture, they hung a framed photograph in the entryway. The three of them at the Georgia aquarium, Emma between them with her arms spread wide, Mason and Sophie looking not at the massive whale sharks swimming overhead, but at each other. The best investment I ever made, Sophie would tell visitors, was a cup of tea that I never actually got to drink.